fall behind blue eyes. Stephen, I ask you this question every week. Are you still as good as you always are?
Timmy, good afternoon to you, mate. I'm always well, mate. I'll tell you what, it's going to be the war of attrition come grand final day. Gee, we're dropping like flies.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting looking at Origin, because it's not going to be where we normally see it in the middle of the year. There are going to be a lot less players available, you would think. So anyway, that is the different world we're living in at the moment. But what about, talk about a warhorse, Mitchell Orbison, 300 games. He'd have to be in that sort of band of players, some of the best players not to play Origin, wouldn't he?
Yeah, it would have to be. A Mr. Fix-It. He can play all over the place. Oh, look, I think a lot of people underestimate his defence. Great defensive player. 300 games. What an effort, mate. That is just unbelievable. That's durability. He's probably suffered from, we talk about representative footy and all that, about being able to play in any number of positions. You could put that bloke anywhere. And I reckon he could play anywhere too. And if you talk to his teammates, what he's given to them over the years, I'm sure that there'd be high praise.
What do you like about him? Obviously, his versatility. What is it about him?
Oh, just the way that he reads the defence. You see him shut down plays all the time against opposition teams, and he's the sort of guy you wouldn't really have to coach. You wouldn't really have to have too many words to say to him, because he'd be one of those guys that just knows his job, goes out there, doesn't try to be anything other than what he is. And I just think he's a great defensive player. He's got that ability. You see a lot of blokes with that ability to bob up and, be in the right place at the right time. He's one of those sort of guys too. But, mate, I couldn't talk highly enough about him. 300 games. Anyone that can do that in this game has done a great job.
Yeah, we'll move on for him. I just want to ask you one more question, because I've seen a bit of this over the years. Those forwards like him that have that perfect defensive timing, that impact timing, which a lot of players don't have. But you see it in some young guys. You can't really coach it into people, can you? But it's that impact timing which is just almost inbuilt.
You know what, Timmy, I'm glad you mentioned inbuilt. Defence is an attitude. If you've got that attitude and that's the way you want to play and you want to master that, I agree with you. You probably couldn't teach technique. He's not the biggest guy out. We're talking about Orbison still. Not the biggest guy in the world, but his technique and his timings is outstanding. And when you have a look at a bloke that's been doing it for that long, he has to have something going for him. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think you can improve defence as a teacher or as a coach, but I don't really know whether that mindset of that technique, I think it's born.
Yeah, and it's one thing that you can always educate young kids on is try to tackle properly, because you won't get hurt as much as like trying to run harder than run softer, because that's when you'll get hurt. But let's move on to James Tedesco. He's a guy that runs at 1,000,000 miles an hour, probably faster than most. 150 games for this superstar of the game.
Yeah, I wish he was still at the Tigers doing 150 games, but he'd probably say the different thing. He's already won a couple of premierships with the Roosters, so good on him, mate. He's taking his game to a next level, leaving the Tigers and going over to the Roosters. He'd probably call himself a Rooster now. Yeah, great effort, mate. His durability and the way that he bounces out of tackles. He's another one. You very rarely, I hope, touch wood here, I hope I don't jinx him, but he's another one that's very rarely out with injury. So, I think he's an incredibly durable player. And, mate, I would probably go as far as to say that he might be the best player in the world at the moment.
It's great that he isn't, because he had his fair share early, didn't he, with those knees? So, yeah. James Tedesco, just extraordinary. What about Kyle Flanagan? Interesting case study here. He's still particularly young in a superstar football team. They've decided to leave him out. Is this all part of the education, do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I do. I think he'll bounce back. There's no doubt about that. I think they said the word drop today. I don't know whether it's been dropped. You think about it, coming into a premiership, the team that's won the last couple of premierships and taken over from Cooper Cronk. And, I'll put it basically, in my position or in the forwards position, you don't have to think about too much. You got to think about bashing the opposition and trying to get over the top of them and running hard and tackling hard, as we mentioned. But you can think about a young bloke coming to the Roosters and then all of a sudden, I know he's got Cleary to help him, but just having the weight of mind of thinking week in and week out and running the game plan and all that. I think it's a rest rather than being dropped. But, Trent Robinson will know a lot better than me. I'm not around the joint all the time, but he'll be back. Mark my words, he'll be back. He probably just needs a rest mentally.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that that's a part of the game that the best coaches handle well. They understand where they need to really work on, particularly mindsets and young players. And, he's a talented kid. He will be back. What about Luke Brooks? He was dropped. And, look, he's coming back this week. Dally M halfback of the year. There's never been a question of how good he is.
Yeah. He probably needed a wake-up call. Probably the coach saw some things in his game that, that he wasn't doing. You have a look earlier in the year, the coach dropped Benji Marshall, and look how he came back. So, he probably needed a bit of a rest too. I like it when Brooks plays for the Tigers. I think I can remember his debut against Georgia Illawarra when he scored a try. So that's a long time ago. I'm glad he's back in the side. As you mentioned, you don't win Dally M halfback of the year for no reason. So, mate, he's got all the ability, all the potential. He's been up for a long, long time. I hope he bounces back. I hope he bounces back well.
Well, if the Tigers are going to get a run on and sneak in to that 8, they're going to have him in form, because arguably he is their best player and has got more tricks in his sleeve at this stage of his life and his career, because Benji obviously did, but he's 35 years old. He has to be in good form, doesn't he, if they're going to make a run at it?
Yeah, he does, and you have a look, and as I mentioned, how Benji bounced back, and I'm sure that Brooksy will. We've all got pride. We ain't getting replaced or put on the bench or dropped or whatever it is. So, hopefully he would have been able to sit back for the last couple of weeks and seen what he had to do, and he's been coached what he has to do now. So, he'll bounce back. He'll be fresh. He's a courageous player. He's played for a long time with the Tigers, and Benji would have passed on a lot of stuff to him. So, and Benji would have showed him the way too about how he bounced back after he was dropped. So, hopefully he comes back and he can be the Tigers' best player.
Back when you were playing, wingers they were set the task of buying Lamingtons and donuts and getting you cold drinks. They've changed, Stephen. They've changed. Charlie Staines, Jake Avarilla. I mean, Rudolph Nareyev, Nadia Comaneci, eat your heart out. They're flying through the air with the greatest trapeze or whatever it is, Blocker. I've stuffed that up, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, some of the things that these guys have been able to do and the way they finish. I think I mentioned the other day that they're probably more important and worth more than centres now. Whoever thought that you would say that centres used to set up the play for the wingers now, at the back of the field, the work that they do, they're like an extra forward. But the most exciting thing about ever to happen in the game, apart from the 6 again this season, was, taking away the corner post. As, if you hit the corner post, it was out, and making that still in. I see these guys, you can see them light up when they get the opportunity to launch themselves into the air. How they get themselves into some of those positions, I'll never know. That's why I was in the front row and they're on the wing. But I love watching it. I think it's been a great addition to our game. And you can see the enjoyment, not only from the blokes who score the try, but from their teammates when they do something that's out of this world.
Yeah, it should have been fly through the air with the greatest of ease. Anyway, we've sorted that out. But it's been magical to watch. I tell you what, you almost do an ACL or a rotator cuff watching them at our age. But what about Gary Schofield? You always did a good impersonation of the Northern Englishman, and he's come out. I haven't heard from him for a while.
Yeah, no, I think he's their go-to man, Scully. Mate, what a great player he was too. And, you could never falter what he did, mate. The support player and the blokes he played against in, Brett Kenny and Wally Lewis and all those sort of guys, and still managed to, be one of the best players on the field. I loved playing with him when he was at the Tigers, fleet-footed. But I do think that he's the go-to man in England now, just to talk about it. But, when he was talking about it, and I read the article, some of the blokes he mentioned, or most of the blokes he mentioned, were greats of our game and been, talked about still today. So maybe it's a little bit unfair. Maybe it's a little bit unfair comparison to compare a lot of the players today. But certainly they're probably not up with the likes of the guys of yesteryear.
Yeah, he's been a bit critical, just for those that haven't seen the articles, saying that the modern day pivots, 5/8s, halfbacks aren't as good as those from the past. But look, I think that we've established in the past on this podcast block, it is even difficult to compare eras.
Yeah, the other thing too is, how long since you've seen a Johns or a Sterling or, you're comparing, Brett Kenny, Gene, you're comparing blokes, Wally Lewis, you're comparing blokes who are great to our game, as I said a little bit earlier. It's, it's pretty hard. I mean, as I said, he's the go-to man. He's probably talking it up about the English game and all that sort of stuff. But, me watching the English game, I don't see too many blokes that set me heart racing too, playing in those positions. So, maybe we're talking about generational players that were once in a generation. And, they'll come back. Mate, even Cleary now, when I watch him now for the Panthers, I don't think I've seen a bloke take his game. I know he's playing Origin and all that sort of stuff, and deservedly so, but he's taking his game to the next level now. Seeing him do some of the things that he's done. I'll give you an example, that little grubber kick last week against Manly, off the inside of his foot. Deliberate for himself. That's when you can see that a bloke, is looking up and seeing and playing what's in front of him.
Well, there are a few generational players there as well. You mentioned Nathan Cleary, but James Tedesco, I don't think I've seen a better fullback. We've mentioned Payne Haas, and you've mentioned Payne Haas in elite company. And the other one is Kickow. Look, I don't know if I've ever seen a runner quite like him with his size. So there's some standouts.
Yeah. Oh, mate, there's 100 standouts in the NRL, mate. There's no doubt about that. Talking about Kickow and that, geez, I'm glad that I wouldn't like to be playing against him if they got him a little bit more early ball. He's one of those guys, he just seems just to do what he just has to do. Imagine if he went looking for work and went looking for the ball. But I suppose, when you look at the modern day player, when they play on that left, he plays on the left edge, hanging out on your on your edge, just waiting for the ball to come to you, or getting some good inside men to get you the footy. Imagine if that bloke went looking for the ball. Mate, he's a tearaway.
I just look. I'll only say this in our podcast, but I don't know what's going on with all the bleached blonde hairdos. Like I'm no fashionista, but some of the hairdos, Stephen.
Yes, well, I put it down to being bored. You must have too much time on your hands if you want to colour your hair like that. Anyway,
throwback
not really my go.
Throwback to Billy Idol. Well, but just on Nathan Cleary, do you think he should be Australian halfback? I know there's a bit of time, a bit of water to go under the bridge. He mentioned how playing against Daly Cherry Evans, he was playing against one of his childhood idols. But it's who gets the 7 job for the Aussies.
Well, I reckon he'll be in the 17. Put it that way. Probably Daly Cherry Evans deserves to stay there again. I mean, he hasn't done anything wrong since he's had that Australian jumper. It'll be interesting. I think Mel's a pretty loyal bloke, but I can see if he keeps playing like that, Cleary, he'll be in the 17 somewhere. He could play. He could play in a lot of positions too. He's probably one of the biggest halfbacks I've ever seen. So you could slot him in anywhere, and I think he'd do a job. But at the moment, if you were picking the team, I'd probably still stick with Daly Cherry Evans. But in saying that, if he got the job, he wouldn't let anyone down, and he'd be there, and it'd be his for a long time, I'd reckon.
Newcastle, let's have a look at them. Bradman Best injured. They've had a few, rough old weeks with injury. Blake Green signing with them. That'll certainly help Mitchell Pearce out.
I think it'll take the pressure off him, mate. Mitchell looks to me the last couple of weeks that I watch him pretty closely. He looks like he's got the weight of the world, just trying to do everything, and maybe even trying too much. I think Green will take a bit of pressure off his kicking game and take a bit of pressure off Mitchell where he can decide to run. I think he's carrying a bit of an injury too. I think he's carrying a bit of a knee. So, there's never any doubting about Mitchell Pearce's tenacious play and the way that he gets stuck into a game. But he just looks to me like he's carrying the weight of the world and all the pressure. And that comes with the number 7 jumper too. But I think Green might help him a little bit.
Dragons, Roosters, Battle of the Pinball Wizards. James Tedesco, obviously best in the world. Matt Duffy, different type of player, nowhere near as accomplished as James. Got a few mistakes in his game, but he's talented.
Yeah. Talented, all right. I've been doing a lot of the Saints games, and he's one of those guys that, when they get the ball and you can see a little bit of an opening, he's gone. He's got unbelievable anticipation and pace. He's starting to get a better passing game in his game now. He's not a one-trick pony. He had his ups and downs too. He was left out of the side for the first few weeks of the competition and brought back in. So he's done an amazing job. It's amazing how you can turn your season around. Like the Dragons were legless. Now in the last couple of months, they've come good. So good to see. Be a good battle. But Tedesco for mine, mate. He's an overall player.
Yeah, they just need to get a few of those 2 points, don't they, the Dragons, because they've been close against, the Sharks and then last weekend again. What about the bit of the grudge match, Souths and Brisbane? You would think on paper that Souths would beat them, Seabold up in Brisbane under pressure, but they were better last week.
I loved what I saw from Cody Walker. Not saying that I like to see anyone injured, but he took the game by the scruff of the neck as soon as his halfback got hurt. So, I like seeing that. A wonderfully gifted player, Cody Walker, already played for New South Wales, but I think he's the type of bloke that with a little bit more responsibility, he's going to be better and better every week. So I feel for Reynolds, who's going to be out for a while, but Cody Walker step up to the plate. I like the mind games between the coaches. Wayne Bennett always seems to get it's always 40 love by Friday. He just knows how to get under the skin of Seabold, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Darius Boyd moved back to fullback. Geez, that looked a lot better when he came into the line with that passing game. And I just wonder sometimes why it took him so long to put him back there. But anyway, he's back there now. They're playing some good footy in patches. That's a big problem with the Broncos. With a bit of inexperience in their side, they'll always be patchy until they get some players, with 60 games under their belt. But mate, they've improved. That's the thing, but they're still not getting the wins.
Bulldogs, they've really improved as well. Then their year's not going to be 2020. Obviously, they're not going to make the finals, but they're going to cause some strife for football teams in the run into the finals. They got Melbourne this weekend.
Yeah, you see that all the time, Timmy. Teams that can't make it and they become pests to other sides trying to kick them out of the 8. So Melbourne for mine, I reckon, out of sight, out of mind. They're up there in Queensland now.
I wouldn't mind being self-isolated up at the Sunshine Coast.
Mate, yeah, good, mate. Especially what's happening in Melbourne now. But no Cameron Smith. They didn't really miss a beat last week without Cameron Smith, the best player in their team. They're going to be there. They've got the best bench in the competition. I think they're the dark horses, the Melbourne team. Everyone's sort of talking about, all these, attacking teams and all that sort of stuff at the moment. Melbourne are going along nicely.
I remember watching Ryan Pappenhausen. I know the family as a boy coming through the Tigers ranks in those rep teams, and he was always this slight kid, but he had this magical ability. He's still pretty small, but he's not as small as what he was. And Andrew Johns, one of the immortals, come out and said, "Look, there may almost be a bench spot for him for Origin this year."
You know what he is, Timmy? We all talk about his speed and all that sort of stuff. I love his toughness. He is courageous. He loves the battle. Mate, who could ever argue with an immortal? But I sort of wonder where you're going to put him. If he's predominantly a fullback. If you can only play in sort of one position, or you haven't been tried in the NRL in a couple of other positions, I don't see how you can get a bench spot. Because of Tedesco is so good. I don't know where you'd put him. But I reckon Joey would be going along the basis you pick your best 17. And then you fit everyone in. So I think you might suffer from not playing in a number of positions.
Okay, Penrith and Canberra, they're skipping along out in front. Penrith, but they're going to come up across a football team here who are tough and uncompromising. And if there's a team that can grind people into the dirt, it's Ricky Stewart's Canberra.
Yeah, but the thing that really, there's a few things that really impressed me with the Penrith side at the moment. Their ability to score on both sides of the field, they can do that. But last week, I was sitting back and I was thinking, I'm really looking forward to the battle through the middle today because of, Fanua Blake and those sort of guys, and then I looked up at Fisher Harris and Tarmo and all those guys that have been around. I thought that Manly, I thought they were beaten through the middle. I didn't think going to the game that I'd say that, but they've got it pretty well covered. The Panthers, they're a well balanced and well rounded team, and for mine, if you look at form and the way teams play at the moment, there's a reason why they're sitting on top of the comp.
Yeah, and Manly just on the Seagulls. look, they really do miss Tommy. They've been able to band-aid up and have some wins, but when you don't have a lot of superstars and you've got a guy like him who's not there for extended periods of time, and you're playing against Penrith, they've got a battle, don't they, Manly?
No, you're 100% right. You know, there's only so many times you can go to the well of toughness.
Yes.
They've done that. They've toughed out a few wins, but then they really met a side, and on their home ground too at Lottoland. So that was a demolishing, wasn't it? When you have a look what Penrith did to them, mate, they smacked them all over the park, and you know, poor old Manly didn't have any answers. But you know, they're the sort of side, and Desi's the sort of coach. They'll have that sort of effort one week, but he'll get into them, and I'm sure there'll be a better Manly side this week.
Well, Stephen, we're in the final month of winter. We're not far away from the finals and State of Origin. Thank God for the football in these dark old days, and we have successfully gone behind blue eyes.
Good man. Good on you, Timmy.
He throws the pass. He's got it back to you know who.